You ever seen a man so calm under threat that the guys with guns look like fools? That was my grandfather, Korean war vet. And when our HOA sent fake cops to intimidate him, they had no clue his 1948 Colt was still loaded. Picture this. 2 wannabe enforcers in bargain bin tactical gear strut up our drive. One waving a crowbar, the other aiming a Glock straight at his chest. And Grandpa, he doesn't even flinch, just rocks in his chair, polishing that old Colt. Steady as stone. The thug sneers, "This land isn't yours anymore." The HOA runs it now, but Grandpa lifts his eyes, cool as ever, and says, "Son, I've been guarding this dirt since before you were born. You want to test me? Be ready." The guy squeezes his trigger finger. Wrong move. One shot from Grandpa's Colt clean, controlled, drops him in the shoulder. His buddy charges. Crack. Grandpa takes his knee out. Whole neighborhood's watching, phones rolling, proof that this wasn't chaos, it was justice. That one shot didn't just save our land, brought down Brenda's corrupt HOA empire for good. You ever seen a man so calm under threat that the ones holding the weapons look like clowns instead of predators? And that was my grandfather. 2 strangers, he looked like just another gray-haired relic on a sagging porch, but to anyone who knew him, he was steel-forged in fire. Korean War veteran who'd stared down real enemies, not kids in costume vests. Fear wasn't in his vocabulary, and respect had to be earned, never demanded. He sat in his porch chair like he'd been rooted there by time itself, rocking gently, rag in one hand, his old pistol in the other. A Colt 1948 issue. Older than me, older than most of the men who'd ever dared walk up our gravel drive with bad intentions. He wasn't pointing it. He wasn't waving it. He just cleaned it with the kind of deliberate rhythm that spoke louder than 100 shouts. A rhythm that said, "I've been here before, son. Don't test me." It's when the crunch of boots broke the afternoon stillness. Men strutted up like they were storming a compound, not a farmhouse. Tactical vests stamped with HOA compliance officer in bold white letters, mirrored sunglasses, cheap radios clipped to their belts. They looked like they'd just stepped out of the clearance aisle at a costume shop, polished boots without a scuff.
All gear too new to be real.
My gut told me immediately what my grandfather already knew. These weren't cops. They weren't anything but hired muscle dressed up for intimidation. At the center of it all was Brenda Holbrook, our neighborhood's self-proclaimed queen, an HOA president. She wasn't here in person, but you could feel her fingerprints on the stunt. Brenda had long treated the subdivision like her fiefdom, barking rules about mailbox heights, paint colors, lawn lengths. She wanted control, and anyone who didn't bow fast enough felt her wrath. Grandpa, though, he wasn't just unbowed, he was immune. One of the men, a broad-shouldered guy with a crowbar balanced, cockily across his shoulder, smirked like he was already picturing himself tearing down our barn. His partner, slimmer but twitchier, had a pistol drawn. His finger hovered way too close to the trigger, knuckles twitching, nerves betraying the false calm his sunglasses tried to hide. "This land isn't yours anymore," crowbar guy sneered, jabbing the air like he was the judge and jury. "HOA says your property falls under our rules now, that barn. Code violation. You're trespassing on your own land." Grandpa didn't even glance up. His rag moved steady, oiling steel, the sun gleaming off the Colt's polished barrel. Then he let out a dry chuckle. The kind that could slice a man thinner than any blade. "Boys," he said evenly, his voice carrying more weight than their whole act. "I was holding this patch of dirt before you were even born. You're not the law. You're just kids playing dress-up with a bad script." The gunman stiffened. At that, jaw tightening, as if the insult had cut too close. "Don't be stupid, old man," he barked. The board voted unanimously. Non-compliance means forced correction. That means you fix things, or you get out. Finally, Grandpa lifted, his gaze calm, sharp, unblinking. He set the Colt across his lap, not pointing, not threatening, just there. A reminder. A relic that had survived wars and would survive to idiots in plastic sunglasses. "This land doesn't answer to your board," Grandpa said, slow enough. "For every word to sink in, it's exempt. It's been exempt since 1948, and the law still respects that, even if Brenda doesn't." The 2 fake cops shifted in their boots, puffing their chests out, but the way their shoulders twitched betrayed them. They had come to intimidate. Instead, They were shrinking in the presence of a man who wasn't even trying. What they didn't realize was that this was just the beginning. Brenda's little theater of power was about to turn into a full-blown war. What came next was like clockwork harassment. The kind that seeps under your skin not because it's violent, but because it never stops. Brenda couldn't outstare my grandfather on his porch, so she tried a new tactic paperwork. It started with violation slips crammed into our mailbox. No signatures, no letterhead, just cheap photocopies with lists of nonsense offenses. Non-standard mailbox, fence deterioration, excessive rustic elements, that last one almost made me laugh. Rustic elements. What they really meant were Grandpa's goats, the same goats that had been wandering those fields long before Brenda ever manicured her little lawn to perfection.
Ow.
Grandpa didn't laugh, though. Took each slip, hammered it to the fence post. By the goat pen, and left it there like a badge of honor. Paperwork recycling, he called it. By the end of the week, the fence was half hidden behind a mosaic of bogus citations, each one flapping in the wind like a battle standard. But Brenda escalated. Saturday morning, I woke to the low idle of engines. 2 black SUVs sat just outside our property line, tinted windows reflecting the sun. No plates, just there, humming like predators waiting for the chance to pounce. Whenever I left the property grocery store, gas station, post office, they tailed me. Same sunglasses wearing men, same cheap clipboards, jotting down nonsense. Like they were filming Community Cops, HOA edition. If it rattled Grandpa, he didn't show it. He'd just rock deeper into that porch chair, the Colt gleaming on his lap, rag running slow circles along its frame. Not a threat, just a promise. And every time the SUVs crept closer, they'd see him sitting there, steady as a church bell, and peel back. That steady calm was scarier than any shouted threat. Then I didn't like being ignored. The next time she came herself, I'll never forget the crunch of her heels on the gravel, the way she marched up like she was a governor delivering an eviction notice. Flanking her were 2 of her so-called compliance officers, not the tactical vest clowns from before this. Time it was khakis, polo shirts, and neon vests stitched with community enforcement. They carried clipboards and tablets, radios clipped to their belts. They thought props made them legitimate. "We're here for inspection," one announced, voice cracking just enough to betray nerves. "Fire hazards, possible hoarding conditions, potential trespassing." Grandpa cut him off with a look that could have frozen a charging bull. "Which is exactly what you're doing right now," he said. "Trespassing. This land is exempt under the 1948 deed. Step off before I call the sheriff and my lawyer at the same time. We'll see who gets here first." The men shifted on their heels, eyes flicking nervously between Brenda and Grandpa. Brenda plastered on her fake sweet smile, the one she probably practiced in her bathroom mirror. "Jack, come on," she cooed. "Don't make this harder than it has to be. We're just trying to keep the community safe." Grandpa laid the Colt gently across his lap, barrel gleaming in the sun. Didn't raise it, didn't need to. His voice was calm, quiet, almost kind. "Unity's safe enough until you showed up." That smile cracked. Brenda's eyes hardened, and after a long pause, she spun on her heel. Her little entourage scurried after her, but not before one of them muttered "psycho" under his breath. That night, the harassment turned ugly. We found 3 dead rats stuffed in a paper bag in our mailbox. Spray paint scrawled across the goat pen. "Get out." Trash pickups skipped us. Mail went missing. Neighbors who'd once shared beers with us on summer nights now crossed the street to avoid eye contact.
Oh, but Grandpa?
He just shook his head like he'd been expecting it all along. "Told you they'd sniff around, son," he said. "They always do." That was when I started digging. Literally, in the back of the barn. Beneath layers of dust and old crates, I uncovered what Brenda feared most. Proof. Notarized deeds. Exemption papers from when the HOA formed in '81. A boundary map signed by Grandpa's old friend Howard, who later became the zoning officer. Ironclad evidence that our land was untouchable. The more I read, the clearer it became. This wasn't about mailbox heights or barns. This wasn't even about goats. Brenda Didn't care about rules, she cared about control. She was willing to break the law to get it. By the time Sunday rolled around, the tension in the air felt thicker than the summer heat. Brenda wasn't backing down, if anything. She was doubling down. And when people like her feel power slipping through their fingers, they don't let go gracefully. They dig their nails in and drag everyone else through the dirt. That morning, I stepped onto the porch with my coffee and saw Grandpa already in position. Upright, steady, the old porch chair creaking under his weight. He wasn't rocking this time. His hands were clasped behind his back, posture sharp as if he were standing on parade, eyes fixed on the road. The Colt lay clean and polished on. The little table beside him, the sun catching its steel like it had been waiting for the day. Then I heard the low growl of an engine. A black SUV rolled up, gravel crunching beneath its tires, and my chest tightened. This wasn't the idle posturing of the days before. This one didn't stop at the property line. It pulled straight into the drive. Two men climbed out, dressed in knockoff tactical gear like the first pair we'd seen. Vests emblazoned with HOA compliance officer in block letters, radios buzzing with fake chatter. The one on the left twirled a crowbar in his hand like he thought it made him dangerous. The other leveled a Glock directly at Grandpa's chest. "This property is under HOA authority now," the gunman barked, his voice pitched high with false bravado. "You're trespassing on your own land. That barn's coming down today, with or without you standing in the way." The neighbors began trickling out onto their porches. Drawn by the sound of the SUV, some raised phones, some just stared wide-eyed. But every set of eyes knew something was about to happen. Grandpa didn't flinch. He tilted his chin slightly, his voice ringing out with a calmness that felt ancient, like stone that had weathered storms. "Son, I've been guarding this land since before you were born. I don't answer to fake badges or hired muscle. You want to test me? You'd better be ready." The gunman smirked, his finger tightening on the trigger. It was the kind of grin people, where when they think fear will win them the fight. He didn't realize he was dealing with a man who'd seen real war, who had stared down artillery and mortar fire and lived. A man who didn't bluff. What happened next unfolded. In a blur but burned itself into memory, as if time slowed just for us. Grandpa's right arm swung forward, and the gleam of his 1948 Colt caught the sunlight. One shot. That was all. The crack split the air, sharp and final. The bullet struck the gunman in the shoulder, spinning him backward. His Glock flew from his hand and clattered into the dirt. He collapsed, howling, clutching his arm as blood seeped through his vest. The crowbar thug roared and charged, but Grandpa was faster. With a sidestep as smooth as a dance step, he swung the Colt downward. The barrel slammed against the man's knee with a sickening crack. The crowbar dropped, his scream tearing across the yard as he crumpled onto the gravel, writhing in pain. Phones captured it all. Not some reckless old man firing wild, but a controlled, precise defense. One round, one injury. No deaths. A war vet proving that calm beats chaos every single time. The neighborhood erupted in shouts, some in awe, some in panic, and then, like thunder following lightning, the distant wail of sirens filled the air. Real deputies, not knockoffs. It's the kind that actually carried authority in their badges. They pulled up fast, tires spitting gravel, weapons drawn. For a second, I thought they'd see Grandpa holding his Colt and assume the worst. But the scene told its own story. Two wounded imposters in stolen gear, one Glock lying in the dirt, and a dozen phones filming from every angle. The truth was undeniable. The deputies swarmed the thugs, cuffing them where they lay. Grandpa set the Colt gently on the porch rail, raised his hands, and stepped back without a word. He didn't need to explain. The evidence and the entire neighborhood would do it for him. Deputies didn't waste time. Within minutes, the two imposters were loaded into ambulances, moaning through gritted teeth. Their stolen gear, the crowbar, the Glock haul, bagged as evidence.
Ow.
Prize was the wall of witnesses. Every porch had a phone held high, videos already uploading to the cloud before the sirens even stopped echoing. By the time the sheriff himself rolled up, the story was practically writing itself. 2 hired thugs pretending to be lawmen, shut down by an old war vet who'd defended his home with one single, measured shot. The sheriff, a broad man with a salt and pepper mustache, walked the scene with an expression that shifted from suspicion to grim approval as each detail came to light. He ordered the fake compliance officers booked under 18 U.S. Code 912 for impersonating law enforcement. The Glock made it worse 122 violations for unlawful possession of a firearm, plus aggravated assault with a deadly weapon at the state level. "They're looking at 10 years easy," he muttered to me while his deputies hauled them away. And then there was Brenda.
Ow!
Her name came up almost immediately. Not just whispered, but spoken outright. Neighbors who'd been afraid to cross her were suddenly emboldened. One after another, they told the deputies about the SUVs, the tailing, the bogus violations. When the sheriff's team pulled warrants and cracked into Brenda's emails and text messages, the case unraveled like rotten twine. There it was in black and white. Reimbursement slips from HOA funds to contractors. Emails instructing them to apply pressure until the old man caves. Even a draft eviction notice she'd planned to deliver once the barn came down. It wasn't just harassment anymore. It was conspiracy, criminal misuse of HOA finances, intimidation. Brenda was dragged into court screeching about keeping order and community safety. But her mask had slipped. The judge didn't see a noble leader, just a petty tyrant who'd abused her neighbors in her position. The verdict was swift, stripped of her title, barred from ever serving on any board again, fined heavily, and sentenced for conspiracy and harassment. The HOA itself didn't survive the trial either. The audit revealed a web of misused thousands, siphoned into Brenda's little compliance division, all while streets went unrepaired and community funds dwindled. The judge dissolved the entire association, nullified every fine they'd ever written, and ordered restitution to the SCE. Homeowners. Years of clipboard tyranny gone in a single gavel strike. The day the ruling came down, Grandpa didn't gloat. He didn't even crack a smile, just sat back in that same porch chair, rag in one hand, Colt in the other, rocking slow and steady. When I asked him what he thought, he shrugged. "Told you, son. Bullies only win until someone stands firm. The barn still stands. The goats still roam. The mailbox is still the same non-standard box. Grandpa built himself 30 years ago, but the neighborhood feels freer. Folks who'd once cowered under Brenda's shadow now wave when they pass, some even stopping to talk again. And every so often, when the sun sets just right, I'll catch the gleam of that 1948 Colt in Grandpa's lap. Not a weapon, not a threat. Just a reminder that sometimes all it takes is one steady hand to end a reign of fear.